Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Living the Questions podcast. I cannot believe we're in season two. I mostly can't believe that the summer is coming to a close as I record this. By the time that this is shared, it'll be just before the autumnal equinox. Yeah, autumn will be starting. And I, where did time go? Where did the summer go? And it's funny I should say that at the start of this because I think the question I want to live into today, or that I am living into currently and want to chat about today, is about time. It's about something that I started to differentiate as clock time and kind of like this internal time. My friend called it soul time, and I'm still figuring out what name to put on it, but I feel like that will help for now to call it maybe soul time because it just differentiates it from clock time. And I did not have a word for it before. And it's interesting. So this past year has been a deeply painful year for me, and it has asked for sort of clock time to take a bit of a backseat in a lot of ways. Still in that world in its own way, right? Like I have to do things to make ends meet. I have to, show up every day and work to have income coming in and resource myself and make sure that I can pay my bills and nourish myself in all of the ways and take good care of the beings in my life, my family, my animals, myself. And also when you're going through deeply painful things in life, I feel like clock time just isn't the same, or like it just doesn't. I am finding that it hasn't really, yeah, like you're living in it differently. And so when I really realized this, it was something that felt very clock time world, kind of came into my knowing. And it was like a very external, like this is a marker of time passing. And all of a sudden I looked back at time in a way where I just noticed how much time had passed. And I hadn't been looking at time that way before, because for me, I was sort of in a survival state of sorts and in an internal space of really needing to just needing to just be where I was at and be with myself, honestly, where I was in each moment. To like genuinely, I was very clear with myself about wanting to not bypass anything, but to like go through the hard, to not avoid it, to not, you know, just immediately go for comfort and to actually, yeah, go through it because I just feel like my future self will be grateful for that. And I was reading something that talked about this like portal of time and just like an interesting theory that in this like end of 30s, early 40s age range, that you kind of go through this portal of time that's asking you to meet what you're here for. Why, if we're talking in soul language, why your soul is here, why it decided to be here, I guess. And are you going to live into that, or are you going to just um, coast? And one of the things that was said when I was talking to a friend who initially brought this to my attention was this idea of like, you can try to not have, you can try to not face that at this certain time period. And life has a way of then bringing things up at a different time. So if you don't go through it now in these late 30s, early 40s this time frame, it's just going to come back in your 50s. It's just going to come back in your 60s. And for some reason, that really landed for me. And I started to feel like, yeah, I don't want to do that. I would rather have the hard now, even though I still wish this wasn't happening. And so that was a really big moment and choice for me. Um, Again, not a fun one. And it didn't feel like, I'm not my future self, although I am. I'm my future self from that moment. And I am thankful to my past self for that. But I wasn't my future self in that moment. And that was a really hard decision to make for myself. And it was definitely needed. But I also didn't know. There's no guarantee that when I'm 50, still, I don't know that when I'm in my 50s or my 60s, that something doesn't come up that needs to also be faced. And I don't know, there's like this inner trust that I have where I really feel like I'm doing the hard work now that is going to be bringing ease at those ages at a later point in life. So, and who knows, but I'm very grateful to have that feeling because it really motivated me to face the reality of things internally and externally. Um, and for the most part, it was really internal. Um, it was really, can I be with the things that feel tensiony and uncomfortable within myself? And can I be really, really honest every day? Can I really be congruent in as many moments as possible to be like, this is where I find myself. This is where I really am, even if I want to be somewhere different. I know we talked about this in the, you know, first season of the podcast. To be congruent is to actually let yourself be where you are, honestly, to not need to be elsewhere, to not need to collapse um, a timeline or, any marker of distance because we think we should already be somewhere else or because we want and desire to be somewhere else. Can we just actually be honest with where we are to then make it possible to get to that other space we want to get to, or at least a semblance of getting towards that at some point. Um, and so, yeah, I feel like a lot of living that I've been doing has been looking like, yeah, what does it look like to be honest with self? And to be honest in this moment, to be honest with myself through that was a really lonely journey. It didn't mean I didn't have beautiful, wonderful, amazing, loving humans around me. It didn't mean that I was like physically alone, although sometimes that's true. What it meant was that I had to build trust within myself to make decisions that felt in alignment that only really I had the answers to. Um, and sometimes most of the time I was living into them. So I was feeling my way into the answers. And this was like such a big shift from relying on another person that I trust and love to give me the answers or to like offer the clarity, although there's value in that and definitely needed at moments. However, I feel like this time period was a lot of, yeah, it was a lot of needing to navigate in ways where I was the voice of, yeah, I was that voice that I was going to. I was that source of my own answer. And again, it wasn't not inviting people into my world, although there was, solitude is necessary and medicinal and for sure needed at times through this process. And I would say that like the lonely part isn't that part. The lonely part is that um it's really it's a hard process. It's a really yeah, it's a really solo process to learn how to trust yourself to then be able to bring yourself to the table in a way that when someone does offer you something, you aren't abandoning your knowing, your own inner knowing because of, because something else with someone you trust and love is being offered here through their experience or through their care and protection of you. Um, and so much of what a lot of my inner wounds and things that I've been discovering is that self-abandonment is too easy to come by. And it was really lonely to undo that because it was taking away these safety, coping, yeah, like nervous system ease ways of going about life to relearn how to do it in a way that actually was wise and like yeah, like was wise and truly nourishing for me now. And so what that means is to actually be able to have those conversations with people and to be able to say when I agree and when I feel something different or I have something else, without it feeling like defensive or feeling like um, I have to push my stuff away and go with what they have because they would make more sense. Yeah, taking away all these storylines of like my own inner voice not making sense, quote unquote, taking away the storylines of, um, yeah, of like the answer being external. And again, that's not to say that we don't go to external sources for wisdom and help and support, most definitely. And in the loneliest times, the best thing that I was able to eventually get to do was to reach out and just share where I was at, not not need anything other than to just be heard in where I was in the moment, not need to be anywhere different than where I was, just to be able to be where I was and to trust that that wouldn't be forever, even though in the moment it felt all consuming and forever um, sometimes. And so I think the lonely road of it all is really just I don't know, man. As I'm saying it right now, it's like maybe the lonely road is the is the point of when we meet ourselves after having abandoned ourselves for so long. Ooh, I just I just felt that in me because I feel like that's exactly what I've been walking through is this reconnection point with this so many inner parts of me that I have unknowingly abandoned or quieted, um, and just didn't regard in the ways that I wanted to be regarded. And I am the first person who should be doing that with myself. And so to walk this and have to reconnect with those parts is inherently lonely at first because I've done such a good job because it kept me safe in many ways. And it was something I learned well to do. And it was, as my dear friend James Olivia says, and I love this phrase, I came by it honestly. And I think there's just something really beautiful about that, to be like, oh yeah, it felt lonely because I did a really good job of like boxing out all of these parts of me, and they're not going to trust me now. And what I was doing was reconnecting with self-trust and my own voice, and that takes time. And so I was lonely because all of these parts were siloed out and it was alone. Um, and I was the only one who was able to actually do that work. And again, it doesn't mean that we need to be alone to do it, but it does mean that there's a level of being with ourselves truly that we need to be open to. And there's, we need to be honest about what it looks like to be able to honor that, to be able to have space for that to be possible, because there's levels of internal nervous system safety that need to be had for that to happen. What's the support that we need to make that possible? And also, this is where time comes back in. That takes time. That takes non-clock time. And what do we do with that? Because when I was seeing things happening for people, like these, like, milestone life things, and all of a sudden I was like, whoa, a whole year has passed. And that was like clock time year. When I was thinking about time before then, I was like, man, I've come a long way from a year ago. But even saying a year, it didn't land the same way it did when I was like seeing someone share their milestones. I was like, whoa, I missed a whole year of like of their life, I feel like. And I didn't, but it just felt like all of a sudden time felt heavier that way. Like milestones show how much can pass. But truly, the inner work that I had been doing, the grief that I had been walking through, the growth of this past year has been, I mean, tremendous. And while it doesn't showcase itself in terms of these external milestones that we all collectively honor, it was really interesting to just see time differently. It wasn't clock time for me. It was something that, like, that is not shown externally. It's really only visible to see how far I've come, or how deep the work I've done is, or how, yeah, the tremendous milestones I know for myself that I've made. They're all internal. So it's it's funny. It's just different than clock time. Whatever that word is for that time period, for non-clock time. I just think it's fascinating to, yeah, to recognize that sometimes a lot is happening even if we can't see it. And that's a good reminder for me too. Because if that's true for me, then that's true for many people. And what if it wasn't, uh, what if we didn't feel like we had to, tuck ourselves away when we're doing this kind of work? And to be fair, there were a lot of times where I wanted to not be around many people. I just was in a grief space. I wanted to be around my trusted people. That is what felt good for me and what I needed for my own healing. And, um, I think that there there were times for me to be able to practice leaning on someone, asking for help, remembering that there were people in my life that were going through really painful years as well in a multitude of different ways, and challenging myself to be able to be there for them and also not make my stuff smaller because their stuff felt bigger in some way, shape, or form. To not do some sort of comparison thing where I'm like, well, I don't get the right to talk about my stuff because it's not nearly as heavy as this, and this person needs, you know, needs the care. Um, so it was a practice of not dismissing myself and also honoring when there were days that some people in my life needed all the space. And there were some days where I needed all the space, and to not feel like like I wasn't able to actually go after that or to actually let myself be able to be present with the people that love me and are wanting to be there. It turns out that when I do that, people are really happy to be there. And that's a beautiful thing. And it only creates more connection. And even if I have to go through things alone, and even if there are moments where I need my own space, because of course we do, it turns out that letting people in, even when I didn't share much at all, just walked through emotions or just said it was a shit day or, you know, just didn't share much, but just shared where I was at, I still felt so held. I still felt so connected. And it didn't mean that like the year felt less painful necessarily in that way, but it didn't feel lonely. Like, yeah, like the loneliness is very clear to me that that was an internal loneliness. And it was really beautiful to not have that loneliness be external. And in the moments that it was, that healing was able to happen in a lot of spaces, or repair was able to happen in a lot of spaces, not all spaces, but that there was, so that connection could happen. Um, and how important that is, how important it is to have community in these moments of life that are extremely painful, or we're going through a like dark night of the soul, or as my friend called it the other day, like the descent. Um, there's just times in life where we're meeting these like darker moments, and yeah, they're the initiation processes in our lives, and what yeah, they're tough. They're tough. And what does it look like to meet those and connect further? What does it look like to be able to be in those, in the hardest, some of our hardest moments, and be strengthening our connection to ourselves and to one another? It's possible, and it's not perfect. And I do feel like this verbal process of a podcast episode is just reminding me that that's a lot of what I got to get up to and see this past year, was what it looks like to really intentionally connect with myself and the parts that I've abandoned over time that are really valuable to reconnect with and not disregard, and to have that help also to connect more deeply with community, with people that I love and love me, to really let yourself receive, to to value, right, your own inner being enough to be able to say, like, I can ask for help. I can lean on this person. I can let myself be loved. I can be messy today and be seen in that, and then have a vulnerability hangover about the fact that I was seen as messy, or that I fumbled my words, or that I am still discerning what is worth sharing and what isn't, and I'm still tender, and so I think it's fascinating. There's no bow to tie at the end of this podcast episode. It's just to say that when I reflect on this past summer, since season one, and, through this past year in general, it's really cool to me to see that it's about connection in the end. That healing involves connection. Healing creates connection. And that's really beautiful. And yeah, I don't know. There's a lot there. There's a lot there. But I like that that's like a big piece that came up through, a big piece that came up through speaking about this right now. I'm curious what will still come up. There's so much that I feel like I'm learning and walking through, and some stuff I'm interested in exploring on here, and some stuff that may wait for other seasons of the podcast where I'm a little further removed and have greater wisdom, but where it feels an integrity to share in a closer time period. I remain curious about that and open to potentially exploring, and not needing it to be perfect, just creating the space for me to take good care of myself. So that's episode 1 of season 2. And I can't believe we're here in season 2. Thank you for being here. If you are rejoining again after the first season, you're coming back from our summer break. Love that. Thank you for being here. And if you're new to the podcast, also thank you for being here. If you have been listening, thank you for being here again. And what an honor it is to have your heart and your desire to want to dive into this back here with me. And if you're new, thank you for being a part of this episode, potentially this community of conversations. I'm so looking forward to the continued conversation that unfolds over the course of this season, which will take us through the transitional autumn season that I love so dearly, and lead us till the winter solstice point, where we'll close and take a winter break. And just thank you for being here for this opening and the ride that is this podcast. I'm really excited to be connecting again here. I hope you had a beautiful summer, and I can't wait to continue conversations with you as this season moves forward. Happy autumnal equinox, or I guess if you are in the southern hemisphere, it would be your spring. So happy fall or spring, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you for being here, and I will see you in the next episode.